Welcome, everyone. Please introduce yourselves on the chat. We want engagement. We want interaction, which is what, by the way, owning the stage is all about, as you will find out in a few moments. So we're here because I'm passionate about the subject. I am the founder of Top of Our Game. In fact, why don't I just introduce myself? My name is Christina Ioannidis. I am a Greek Venezuelan, so an exotic woman who lived for many years and loves the Middle East and the world, to be honest. I'm a global citizen. I'm an internationally renowned motivational speaker and trainer. Before COVID hit, I would travel the world. In fact, I was probably Jouhayna's best friend because I traveled the world 2.9 times according to Google. So I was on a lot of planes, and I'm sure Jouhayna kept me safe in a lot of those. I'm also a consultant, and I'm also a speaker, as I said, and I work with many conference organizers, and I've run multiple events as an MC and as a contributor, Marketing to Women 2015, 2016, in Retail Conference Middle East, Arab Luxury World Awards, among others. I do have the luxury of working with professionals and as I say, move them from shy, anxious speakers to confident TED-level speakers with stage presence and charisma. I am passionate about giving my clients a unique voice to share the personal stories of resilience and transformation. And by the way, anyone who follows me on Instagram will know that these are my two favorite subjects. I also have been awarded the 100 World of Difference Award by the International Alliance for Women in Washington, D.C. in 2014 for my contribution and supporting women and women's economic development. That's a little bit about me. Now, you're probably thinking, what's Top of Our Game? If there's people here who haven't attended any of the events before, let me explain to you what we do. Top of Our Game is a platform that fuels and supports women, particularly in the GCC and beyond. There's three areas where we focus. One is about achieving ambitions and really showcasing women in male-dominated worlds. Some of you might know Captain Yasmin. She is one of the first Saudi Arabian pilots who was also part of various events that we run. The second realm is all about finding your voice, and you can see the beautiful Jouhayna here as our model for speaking and moderating. Here, actually, Jouhayna, if I'm allowed to share, this was your first MC experience, was it not, at the Women in Aviation Awards?
It was the closing speech.
It was her closing speech, and look at the relief on her face, the happiness, to be honest, you know, the enjoyment, the thrill. And that's what you get when you do it right, and when you kind of feel the energy at the end of completing a successful speaking event. The third area we focus is on peak performance and women maintaining peak performance through their mental transformations as well as physical transformations. So those are the three areas we focus on Top of Our Game. I know we have certain gentlemen here. Please do not be overwhelmed because there's a lot of women. We're very inclusive, so thank you for joining us. The topic today is non-gender specific, and hopefully it's of relevance to everyone who joins. Now, as I said to you before, this is an interactive session, so I will be introducing the amazing Jouhayna Almheiri in 1 second, but we will be talking a lot, but please, any point you have questions, because we've got an hour and a half together. Any questions you have, any burning considerations, thoughts, please either drop them on the chat or just feel free to jump in. We're all about interaction and engagement. So let me introduce the amazing Jouhayna here, who's wearing my favorite color. Jouhayna is an Emirati public speaker and master of ceremony. She does command an excellent level of English language with an irresistible personality who you know, no doubt, will experience through this virtual screen. And she is making a unique addition in the events industry in the Middle East and beyond. At just 19 years of age, Jouhayna was part of the 0.2% of women to successfully make it into the air traffic control program of the United Arab Emirates. Now, Jouhayna, please feel free to add anything that I may have missed in your very brief intro.
Oh, I love all the words. I'm a very direct person, so I would have just said air traffic control officer, public speaker, artist. Boom. Like, so I love all of this language, and I feel like you've definitely captured like the very rosy part of it all. And yeah, all the public speaking is thanks to you as well. So, I mean, I love the introduction. If anybody has any questions for me, I'm happy to answer to add to the introduction, but that's about it. I think you nailed it.
Well, thank you, Jouhayna. Well, one of the things that you have to do as being a voice in a pilot's headset is to be very direct. So I would expect no other way, apart from your excellent timekeeping, to also be super direct. So thank you very much for that. And it is a pleasure because you know that I admire you in every possible way. So what are we going to do today? It's 20 to the hour. We're going to make a start then. People are still logging in, but I'll make a start. Today's session is, we're going to focus on 4 different areas. We're going to focus on why public speaking is important as a leadership trait. I think it's important when we're talking in a masterclass about owning the stage like a TED speaker, as a TED speaker, we need to understand why we're doing it. And I'm going to focus also a bit on what are the differences between presenting and public speaking. These are 2 very different skill sets that a lot of people get mixed up. And it is very important to understand, and I believe, and you will hopefully learn that it's important for us to build our careers and stand out by utilizing the skill set of public speaking. Then I'll focus a little bit more why the TED style speaking can propel your career and why it's important. And then finally, the top tips, what to do, how to rock. I think that's what I gave the title of the slide, is how to rock the stage as a TED speaker. Through each one of these points, Jouhayna is going to give us her practical examples and her practical experience, because there's nothing better than someone who's been through the journey of being an anxious presenter through to being a TED speaker. And before we start on that, Jouhayna, because I know you have a lot to say about your journey, I want to share one fact here. And I don't know if you know this, but the fear of public speaking is the most common phobia ahead of death, spiders, and heights. The National Institute of Mental Health reports that public speaking anxiety, or glossophobia as it's called, affects about 73% of the population. The underlying fear is judgment or negative evaluation by others. So the fear, in summary, of public speaking is worse than the fear of death. Hopefully everyone can hear this. Most people fear public speaking, but public speaking is actually one of the most powerful toolkits one can have in their arsenal of as a professional. So before I actually start, I want Jouhayna, I wanted to ask you a first question. What was your journey from being an anxious presenter to being a TED level speaker? Talk us through this, because you know the audience will benefit a lot from this.
So you've taught me to be a storyteller. So here we go, story time, everyone. So I actually was unaware I had a fear of public speaking. I'm naturally, for people that know me in person, I'm a massive talker. Like, I don't keep quiet. I've been told I have verbal diarrhea at one point. And growing up, I did ballet, and I was on the stage every year, no problem, center stage. And some of the times I was even like the main ballerina that was leading the dances for most of the closing ceremonies and everything else of the shows we did. And I had no issue dancing my heart out on stage. So I thought, oh, I'm a natural talker. I don't mind dancing on stage. So I thought public speaking wouldn't be an issue at all for me. So I got nominated by my work to represent them in Dubai Air Show as a panelist. And I remember I got on stage and the moderator introduced the topic. She introduced us as well as all the panelists. And she went through each panelist and asked different questions. And by the time she came to me and she asked me my question, I realized I completely froze and I felt like a deer in the headlights. And my boss was sat on the front row looking directly at me like, say something, do something. So the little people in my head also said the same thing. They're like, Yalla Jouhayna, like, say something, do something, you know, you have to represent well. And I stumbled a few words out, and I was so aware of the sound that I made because I could hear myself in the speakers, which I never had to do before. And in that moment, I realized that, yeah, I can't do this. I don't like it. I don't like being on stage to speak. And I remember after I found you was through Top of Her Game. I was actually fangirling over Top of Her Game on Instagram. And I was like, oh, I love this page and we need to collaborate. And I just wanted to like send you more women to promote on this page and say, look, like, let's do this. And then because we were talking on the phone and both of us are massive talkers, you turned to, I asked you like out of the blue, I'm like, do you teach public speaking? And you're like, yes. So I was like, perfect. I'd like to hire you. I've realized that I do have some place that I'm lacking. So yeah, so I just made the decision to work with you, and we worked together for around, is it now 2 years or 1.5, something like that?
It's 1.5 if you remove the COVID delays and everything that.
Yeah, the COVID delays definitely made it difficult, and all our sessions were virtual because you weren't in the country, and of course the different restrictions we had in place to protect the population in the UAE. So you actually made me tailor-made programs where I told you, I'm like, I have this event, please help me. And then we got ready for this particular event, which helped me a lot because it wasn't a cookie cutter program. And then you asked me, you're like, well, what do you want to gain out of this? And I said, well, I want to do TED. And I remember when I said that, I was like, I'm really reaching, and this is like something in the stars, and I probably won't get there, but that's the level I want to be at. So when I went to the Women of Stature Awards and Josephine was there and she's heard my talk, who's with us today, people came to me after, and I practiced my TED talk on stage that day. And that was the first time you actually met me live as well, one of the few moments we shared together here. And people came to me after and they're like, number one, can I give you a hug? Number two, you need to do TED. And I was like, and nobody knew it was for TED. And this was one of my warm-up sessions that I chose to do. So I fast forward to being part of the TEDx for the GEMS New Millennium School. I remember when it was a student-led event. So the students asked me, they're like, oh, so please send us your slides and, we'll get them ready for the stage and you'll be the first one on. And I said I had no slides, and they were mortified. They were like, you have no slides and you want to talk for more than 8 minutes? I'm like, yes. And you taught me how to be able to stand on stage when I was a deer in the headlights and I couldn't even articulate my words or my thoughts, to standing on that stage and talking about my story straight from the heart for like 9.5 solid minutes. And people told me they teared up. One lady came up to me and like asked for a hug, and she said to me, it went from her ears to her heart. And those are one of the few comments that I got. So that's how it went from super anxious and not even knowing I had an issue to standing on stage and doing my TEDx just a few days ago.
Wow, that's a journey and a half, and I hope everyone who hears the story can be inspired by Jouhayna, because what I think this demonstrates is that we can all overcome our fear of public speaking. We can all take a structured approach to this. It is not as Jouhayna says, it's not a one size fits all. Different people have different triggers that challenge them when they're presenting or they're speaking in public. So thank you for sharing this, Jouhayna. I'll come back to you with a few more questions in a few moments, but I'd like now just to kind of jump into public speaking and why I believe it's a leadership trait. We're talking about leadership. We all associate ourselves, or we're told we are future leaders, especially those who are of the younger generation. And the fundamental piece of a leader is all about communication. A good leader has to be a top-notch communicator. They have to be engaging. They have to be motivational. A leader isn't just a person who tells someone what to do. It's about getting people to do something because they want to do it. And in the post-pandemic area, this communication involves demonstrating vulnerability and authenticity. I think one of the things that has happened during COVID-19 is that we now, both as employees, both as managers, or even as consumers, we want the companies or the people we interact with to demonstrate their vulnerability and authenticity. We appreciate that things can happen, that life is not perfect. But what we do want is we also want people or companies that are open about this, and they build with a greater level of empathy when they communicate. And here there's a great example. And if you haven't seen this video, there's the CEO, the former CEO of Marriott Hotels. His name is Arne Sorensen. When COVID-19 hit in March 2020, he made a very, very heartfelt message to his employees. Like everyone, he was the Marriott International, the hotel group, was stalled, and operations had to close. People were put on unknown, how shall we say it, furlough. They didn't know how long they would be closed for, etc. We've all experienced it, and and especially those who worked in the hospitality and airlines and aviation industries have really felt it firsthand. But what he did, Arne, or Mr. Sorensen, I don't know the man, but I found him so inspirational when I read his message, or I saw his video because it became viral. And it was because he opened his statement. He had a bald head as a result of having cancer. And so he started his statement with, I am appealing to you as your leader who is going through a lot of challenges, and you're going through the same challenges. Mine just happened to be different than yours, but we are all in the same pot. And that was, for me, the clincher. When he was doing his speaking, he was basically saying, we're all the same. I am here to motivate you to kind of keep positive, but here's my story. I've got cancer, and it's the same. The level of, or the lack of comfort that I have is the same that you're experiencing now. We're on the same boat, but together we can make it through. It is truly, for me, it was truly life-changing as a speaker and as a communication, as far as I've ever seen, to be honest. I mean, I also appreciate someone like Steve Jobs, and we've seen his great videos when he did his commencement speech to Harvard. But this man, Arne Sorensen, and I have to say, may his soul rest in peace, because the poor man did pass away last year from his cancer. But the point is he had this level of empathy, and that's where public speaking is a leadership trait, and it's something that we all need to develop, because to motivate a team, to motivate others, it is through communication. So going on then to, okay, what is the difference between presenting and public speaking? And I'm going to come back to Jouhayna on this in a few moments. But very often people make the mistake to think that presentations are the same as public speaking. So when Jouhayna said, I didn't know I had it in me to do a TED level speech, is because TED is public speaking. Presenting is what you do in an office, what you do in your organizations or with your team. So let me explain to you the difference, because it's very important for us to appreciate the difference. So presenting is a communication of facts, updates, information. It's generally quite formal. And the audience size could be anything from a small team to a much bigger organizational meeting, but they tend to be smaller group meetings. Public speaking, if everyone's seen a TED speech, public speaking is completely different. Why? Because when you do a TED speech or a TED style speech, your aim is to motivate your audience. Your aim is to get the audience to feel something. And I'm going to do the heart shape here, because what people will feel are your emotions. The setup is quite informal. So even though TED is a little bit formal, it's informal in the sense that you have absolutely no crutches. You don't have podiums, you don't have seats, you just have yourself and your clicker if you do use a few slides that you're allowed to use. And public speaking involves storytelling. As Jouhayna said when we opened up, you have to be a good storyteller to engage people. Now, very often people say Nelson Mandela, Barack Obama, these are the great storytellers, the great orators, because their speeches always involved a certain level of storytelling. So public speaking is emotive. Public speaking is about the heart. And the audience size tends to be large, and very often they're live events. Jouhayna's event was a live broadcast on various fora, if I'm allowed to say that. So going on to Jouhayna then here, because this kind of links to one of the questions I have for you is, what did you learn about yourself when you went through this journey from trying to get to grips with presenting through to actually becoming this TED level public speaker?
So I think firstly, like I said, I had no idea that I wouldn't have been good at it. When I went on stage, I was so confident. I'm like, I got this, no problem. So it actually brought me back to reality, where I was like literally like forced to take a look at myself and be humble and say, okay, well, you're not good at everything or what you even think that you might be good at. So yeah, because even in my journey, and I've mentioned this a lot of times and I'm very open about it, that I never knew what it is that I wanted to do with my life. And then when I got into air traffic control, I got razor sharp focused. I focused on that. I pushed through, I powered through, and I made the decision that I'm not going to allow myself to ever, if I do anything, I'm going to do it well or not at all. So when I went on stage and I was blindsided by the fact that I didn't have any clue on how to articulate my thoughts, let alone actually speak, I learned about myself that I actually don't know what to do here. And I was taken aback because I realized even though I became very confident in what it is that I was doing, and I know how to talk about air traffic control, I have no issues being on stage, but I couldn't speak on stage. I literally was stuck. So it was a moment of realization that, wait, you don't know what you're doing. So it was, I'm not gonna lie, my ego was a little bruised. So that's one thing that I learned. And then after that, I realized that I do need to find somebody to help me get to that level. So like I said, I was fangirling over the Instagram page you had, Top of Her Game. And then it's just kind of by coincidence that I found you. And then after I found you, I tell everyone about you, because if there is anybody that needs to know about public speaking and learn about it, I send them your way. Munna couldn't join us today, but Munna Tajarbi, she hired you 3 or 4 days before an event, and she was ready to be on the stage to do a good enough job for her first ever emceeing in English, which is her second language. So I think what I learned is that you need somebody in your corner to be able to guide you. And this doesn't apply only to public speaking. This applies to everything. Always try and find a mentor, especially if you're unsure about the next step to take. And then, like I said, when I said TED, I felt like I was reaching really high. I'm like, they say reach for the stars. I felt talking about TED is like reaching for the moon, like not even the stars. So that's the main thing. So I didn't actually think that we would really get there. I was like, she's going to give me the tools, but how much can you learn on Zoom? Honestly, like, I'm going to be fully honest with you. I was very skeptical about the whole journey. But then when you got me to where I was, you flew to the UAE around the same time I actually really needed you as well. And then you helped me prepare for 5 events I had in a row. I think, like I said, I learned that you always need somebody in your corner. The more the merrier, especially if they're good for you. And it's never too late to learn something new. And I think those are the main things that I learned in terms of the public speaking. But I've applied all of this that I learned to many aspects of my life.
Great, thank you for that, Jouhayna. It's so refreshing to hear. Now, everybody who is on this event, please feel free to jump forward with questions. As we said, I'm going to carry on, but I am not here just to talk. I want us to make sure that we are covering the questions that you may have, because I am going to carry on. But please, any burning questions, and even questions to Jouhayna, of course. She's absolutely amazing. And I admire her for what she has achieved. Now, one of the things, and Jouhayna says she's watching out for the questions. She's an air traffic control officer, everyone. She's gonna shake you into action. She controls pilots. She can control you all. So public speaking to me is a career propeller, and that's something I want to highlight to Jouhayna, because what Jouhayna has done is she has done something so powerful for herself in the last year or so that I have been, year and a half that we have been working together. So let's go back to basics. When you can dominate standing on a stage with nothing but bright lights on you and an audience that's live in front of you, and you can manage your nerves, and you can manage remembering those amazing stories you have, you build your internal confidence no end, and you overcome what's called your limiting beliefs. It is the best and the most powerful way to actually build that confidence inside you, which will help you in every realm of life, by the way. It isn't just about public speaking. It's about using the techniques and the strategies to control those limiting beliefs. You also redress your imposter syndrome. For those who don't know, there is a syndrome called the imposter syndrome, which essentially is about you thinking that everybody else who's watching you knows more about the subject than you do. And it is something that is recognized as a psychological limitation. And so when you get in front of that audience and you stand and you have the confidence to do your speaking over 15 or so minutes with your stories, you know that you are the person who has the knowledge, and the audience will be motivated by what you've got to say. You just have to put the hard work in, and that's something that I'm going to ask Jouhayna about. The third thing that Jouhayna did stellarly, as far as I'm concerned, is she created her personal brand. Jouhayna is a master marketeer, even though that is not her background. We did work on her brand because part of when you become a public speaker, you really have to dig deep on your personal story. And she's taken that to the next level. As far as I'm concerned, she is a case study on how to do it right. So in today's very competitive world, professionals stand out by, yes, but it's about what you do on LinkedIn. Yes, it's about how you maintain visibility with your stakeholders, but it's also about getting people to know of you and you motivating others and being seen as a leader, which I said is the beginning, as I said in the beginning, in the first slide. So it helps you become a brand. And finally, you become that motivator, inspiring others to take action. Again, the core of leadership, but also the core of individuals that drive change. And that's one of the beauties about TED, by the way. It is about making change, new ideas that may help drive global or local change. So we've got two questions coming through, and I'll just pause right here, and I'm going to read the first one. And thank you, by the way, to Emmanuel and to who's the first question from? Hold on.
Shiba.
Shiba. So Shiba's question is, how do you control your emotions and how do you remember the next step? So that's question one. How do you control the flow of your speech during the topic, which is totally new, or the question which is totally you're not ready to answer mentally? Okay, so let's focus on the public speaking one first. Shiba, Jouhayna, do you want to take that one and then I'll add?
Yeah, so I can definitely talk about the emotions because I was full of them in terms of learning how to control that. So it's actually what you taught me, and I like I said, I've applied it to all aspects of my life. So you told me to write myself a personal proposition. So I am, and then Jouhayna, you know, and then I can't remember what the next line is because the one that I've made up for myself has a lot of profanity that propels me forward. So it's like, you are an absolute, and you got this because you are. So it's definitely not like public friendly for me to share, but like, it's just about believing in yourself. So you take a moment and you're like, I am Jouhayna, I have got this. I'm going on the stage because I have the knowledge and the ability to express and explain this topic the way to the very best that I possibly can. And there's a reason why I've been selected to do this. But again, mine has a lot more colorful language to this. And I just keep repeating that to myself and reminding myself that I am there for a reason, and I do have what it takes to answer whatever question it is. And how to remember the next step. Well, you taught me the sandwich method, right? So it's you write down your title. Did you include the sandwich method in the slides, Christina? Any chance?
No. That's the stuff that we do. That's the stuff that we do during the course.
Okay, yeah. So basically, Christina also gave me a method that's called the sandwich method, and you have to picture it like a sandwich. So you've got your bun at the top and your bun at the bottom. So that's your opening and your closing, and then all the filling that you have in the middle. So you have a certain structure of how you're actually going to go through the flow of everything. And that's also another way to manage your nerves. So you make sure that you cover topic 1, 2, 3, and then you wrap it up, and then you have a closing line at the very end. So introduction, point 1, 2, 3, and then you review all your points, and then you close it. So also rehearsing this helps manage your emotions and your nerves, because you're like, I know everything already. So you can go onto the stage and say, well, I have to say X, Y, Z. And then there's the next question about a answer that you're not ready, a question that you're not ready to answer. I can only speak from what I've had to deal with, as this is usually in a panel discussion session. So I know, Shiba, I know you're speaking about this because usually you are a panelist or a moderator, and then somebody from the audience just randomly asks a question and you're like, oh, how do you respond? I personally just have a listen, and if it's something to go into depth, then I would say that I'll speak to them off the stage. But I think this is your domain, Christina, for part 2 of the question.
Yes, well, public speaking, we focus on the things we know about. So this question around you getting a new question that you're not prepared for, or you're not ready to answer mentally, is very deep. So if you are moderating or you're paneling, one of the great deflections is to obviously pass the question to a panelist. So you can say, oh, excellent question, who would like to take this? And obviously you're putting it forward to the panelist if you're the moderator. Now, if you've got a topic which is totally new and you're not comfortable answering, there's nothing wrong with saying, do you know what, this is a fantastic question. I'd like to come back to you on that. Can we have a conversation, as Jouhayna said, during the break or as we finish this? One of the things that is very important when we're in public, we don't have to answer absolutely everything. Unless it's the CEO of your organization or your employer, you can take the time to say, you know what, I'll come back to you on that because I want to make sure I get all my facts straight. There is nothing wrong with that, even if you're in a public forum. So please don't put pressure on yourself. And this is where this, to me, Shiba, is indicating to me that you're actually putting a little bit of pressure on yourself, because it takes a lot of guts, right? It takes guts to say, I'm not, I want to get back to you on this. Let's have a conversation over the break. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. However, it's perfectly acceptable. We should not be in that pressurized situation that we feel that we've got to take absolutely every question that's thrown at us. And, there are questions that are inappropriate in a public forum, and just say, you can always say, again, same answer without actually being rude to the individual. I'm afraid I need to come back to you on that. Let's have a further chat. I'll catch you up during the break. No issue there. Emmanuel has asked, how did you manage to break off from the veil of peer pressure, family, and culture? I presume this is a question to Jouhayna, and it's very deep.
Yeah.
Jouhayna, I think this is part of your story. How did you manage to break through?
Well, I don't feel like I'm cut from the same cloth in terms of, what is expected of a typical like Emirati woman. I was raised very differently, I feel, compared to what everybody expects to be the norm, quote unquote norm. So to be honest, I was raised to think for myself in terms of not having to worry about what other people have to say. I'm not gonna lie, it was very difficult to get to that though, because it is very common, especially in places where the culture is so rich amongst certain nationalities, where, it's like, well, you have to conform and act in a certain way. And I feel like I was always the rebel. From the age of 11, I started to make serious decisions about my life. If anybody heard any of my public speaking, I do talk about how I was bullied. And around 11 or 12 was when I made the decision, enough is enough, and I'm cutting it out. And even choosing to do that and standing up for myself from such a young age, I feel like I learned that just through watching like my grandma stand up for herself, because she was very headstrong as a woman, and she played a very big role in raising me. So I feel like just the women that I had that raised me taught me to not be worried about what other people have to say and think about you, because if people are putting on any pressure onto you, it's a poor reflection on them, especially if it's a negative sort of pressure. In terms of family and culture, I was raised by very, very strong, supportive women. All of them had massive pioneering spirits, as I like to call it. This is part of the personal brand that Christina taught me, pioneering spirits. My mother was the first female veterinarian in the United Arab Emirates. My auntie, her sister, the third female gynecologist ever in Tanzania, which was taboo for a woman to have that job. You know, even my grandmother, she, despite being an orphan, she got into medicine, she married the love of her life, and she still pushed for what she believed in, regardless of what other people said and thought about her. So I think that because I was raised by such strong, resilient women, I was like, I'm going to do what it is that I know is right. And if I know it's right, I'm going to continue doing what I do, and not allow interference, literally interference on my frequency to decide what it is that I do, because it makes me happy to use my voice and share my story. And some people may or may not like it, but that's their problem, not mine. So
Right.
yeah, I think I'm hoping that answers your question, but that is a very deep, that's a whole other TED talk, to be honest.
That is complete TED talk. We need a manual, actually. This is a hint, because I think the manual's got some very interesting things that he's got in his mind, and that's why he asked this question. We need a manual to be a TED speaker. Now, we've got a question here from Archana. Archana, you're asking about how you overcome your restrictions from your employers. This is a very common theme, by the way, in terms of not being able to take speaking opportunities. You remember I mentioned the word your personal brand. You are not your employer. So if you want to take speaking opportunities, you can, if you're not representing your personal brand. And obviously a great example is Jouhayna, and Jouhayna is the expert on this because she doesn't always represent her employer. Jouhayna, do you want to explain how you manage and kind of walk that tightrope?
Well, so air traffic control, in case anybody doesn't know what it is, I basically tell pilots where to fly and keep them safe in the sky. So that in itself is a very security sensitive job. So I'm legally obliged not to talk about anything in detail. I can talk about what it is, how it works, but I can't talk about the in detail depth. So that for me is already like a net that I can't go into. So we definitely don't talk about anything other than explaining what air traffic control is to the maximum and the different types of air traffic. So that in itself already forces me not to talk about it. In terms of representing like my company or anything like that, for example, if it's like an aviation-based show, then of course I'll go and I'll speak through them, especially if they do want me to represent them. But otherwise, I'm just talking about myself and my journey. And I realized that people just wanted to know how I got to where I am. So I just talk about my journey and how I got there, because the statistics around the world, only 1% of the applicants make it into an air traffic control program. And this is something that I share because it's a worldwide well-known statistic to the people that do know eventually and look into it. But you know, but being part of that 1%, and then if you narrow it down for women, it averages it down to 0.2% worldwide. So just these statistics alone, people say, I want to know more and tell me more. So I simply just talk about my journey and how I got there and the different hardships that I had to overcome and go through in order to get to where I am. And I guess that is what people want to hear from me, and I don't mind sharing it. So that's what Christina has basically trained me to do, to navigate that kind of talk. And you know, I think one of the biggest reasons why it's easy for me not to talk about my company is because I don't have to talk about them. It has nothing to do with them, where I got to. They gave me the opportunity and I'm very grateful. But outside of that, there's nothing for me to really say and do and discuss, because I'm not talking about the inner workings of how air traffic control works in that unit and how they run the show with whatever it is that goes on inside, because that's secret. So I think that's how I navigate that. And HR can't get involved, because if anything, it's good publicity. Like, look, Jouhayna is representing us in all these different conferences. Is she saying anything about what we're doing? No. Period.
Great, thank you, Jouhayna. I think one of the learnings from here, Archana, and I hope this answers your question, and I hope I'm saying your name correctly, correct me if I'm wrong, is it would be an idea to start, get on the speaker circuit, as it's called, and then see how your company responds. The first thing they're going to say, companies always say no, right? And I don't believe in asking for permission always. Sometimes it's just better to beg for forgiveness if they believe that you're off tangent. But if you actually just focus your message on your story as opposed to your company, and you're not a company representative, again, it's your personal brand. You're not there to sell your employer, right? You're there to represent yourself. So hopefully this is a way you can manage that challenge. Great questions coming in. So we got one more. Do you feel anxious while addressing any specific point to a more senior professional? If so, how do you overcome it? I ask this question as there can be this mindset in some cases where one would think that expert seniors always know better. Oh my God, what a great question. Jouhayna, do you want to take this or do I take it?
I think you should take it, and then I'll add my personal touch on how I handle it, because you're gonna have a very elegant way of handling this as opposed to what I would do. And what I have done.
Absolutely. Yeah. When we do the training, we talk about the macho culture. Machos are individuals who always know better, right? And they tend to be alpha male, female, mostly male. Sorry for the gender bashing, not intended to be a gender bashing session, but this is where you have to use the language of influence. So you use, as part of your presenting and your public speaking, language that builds engagement from those individuals and makes them assume that they know more than you do. You may be the expert, okay, but if you preface, and I'll give you an example. I very often say when I'm doing trainings, as you probably already know, blah, 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 blah. So that sentence implies that you already know. I know you don't know, but to you, it sounds like, oh yeah, I probably already know this. So it's a message that just flows into you without jarring you. That's the kind of language you need to use with these types of macho individuals, and that is from the language and behavioral profile from neurolinguistic programming. And we do cover that, by the way, when we do our sessions, because you're absolutely right, Rishika. There is always people who know much more than they think they know much more than you do, even though you may be the expert. So it's about here you implying that they know, but actually you know internally they don't know, but because you use that irresistible language, as it's called, you take them with you in your influencing journey. I hope that makes sense. Jouhayna, what were you going to add on that?
Well, I've had like real life experience in this, and I don't even think I reached out to you in this regard. It was the SD1 conference. I don't know if you remember. Now, I had no idea what SD1 was, and I had to fill in for a friend and moderate one of her sessions because she was a close contact with COVID and she couldn't attend. So it was very last minute, and it was purely a favor for a friend. And I told her, I'm like, what is SD1? And she's like, I have no idea. And I was like, okay. So I found out it's something very tech, and I believe it has something to do with blockchain. I don't even remember what it was about. And I believe this is actually where I met Shiva at this conference for the very first time. And I had to speak to these panelists, and she hadn't prepared any of the questions yet or anything like that, and hadn't even spoken to the panelists yet. So I had to do everything. And honestly, like, I work shift work, and I finished 3 night shifts, and I was not in the mood. And I was very honest, and I said, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. My profession is air traffic control, and I would like you to let me know what kind of questions you want me to ask you, because I feel this is a very specific field. And as you already know, it's a very specific field, as Christina says. And please let me know what sort of questions you would like me to ask you, because I'm not going to lie, this is not my expertise, and I'm genuinely filling in. So I think I had the advantage because I was filling in for someone. I wasn't already pre-selected for the specific thing. So I think that definitely helped me. But also, I think it's my personality as well. I was like, if they wanted to underestimate me, I also do not care. I'm just here to ask you questions and moderate, and then you answer your own questions. But also the air traffic controller and me, we had every question planned to the T, to the minute, for the moderating. So that's how I controlled that situation. And I just handled it with pure honesty. I'm very direct, as I said. So I just told them straight, and they were actually, they responded very well. And I don't know if it's simply because they were very nice, or they appreciated my honesty. Maybe it was a mix of both. So that's how I handled it. But your approach is the approach, because I've used that on multiple occasions with the language of persuasion, as you call it.
Yes, brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Jouhayna. So I'm going to then move back to share screen here, because I want us now to focus on, if you're going to go to become a TED level speaker, right? There are a number of things that you need to take into consideration. So I'm here to share a few of the big tidbits, the big strategies to consider, and they fall into three different areas. They fall into, and I call it, by the way, building your public speaking capital: your audience, your message, and yourself. Okay, these are the three areas you need to focus on. And when we do the course on owning the stage, when we are looking at rocking being a TED level speaker, the first thing you have to think about is the audience. So if you're thinking about doing a TED speech, if you're considering doing what Jouhayna did and rocked 2 weeks ago, why is the audience there? Why are they there? Are they there because they're expecting to be motivated? Hopefully that's the case with TED. Or are they there for some other reason? What do you want them? The second question is, what do you want them to feel as a result of your speech? Remember, you're not imparting just facts. Your role there at this level of motivational speech is to get people to feel something. And the third thing is, when you're thinking about the audience, what do you want them to do as a result of your speech? You want people to be motivated to do something. And when we talk about this in any public speaking engagement, you have what's called the call to action. And that's what you end your speech with. In Jouhayna's case, it's about thinking about the challenges that individuals have had, and then think about the fact that if she can do it, you can do it. I'm sorry, Jouhayna, I'm kind of disclosing your punchline here. That's the point. That's what we had to work on. And so this is when you're thinking about, the first thing you do is you think about the audience. Then you think about your message. So this is how I would approach my TED speech. What is your message? Why is it relevant to the audience? And you know, Jouhayna mentioned earlier about thinking about your unique selling proposition. And here, this is where your unique selling proposition comes in, is what makes you so special that you're standing in front of that audience? So you have to think from their shoes, what makes you relevant? How will you deliver? So this is the next question you'll need to ask yourself. How will you deliver in a way that's enticing? What message are you going to have that is a common thread? I'm actually working with a client now, and I'm going to have to share this because I love it. She's doing a speech, a very big speech for the United Nations. I obviously work with people who have no ambition. And I say this sarcastically, but she is going to use a story as a metaphor, which involves starfish. And she's going to take a starfish with her, right? And she will close the speech in bringing out that starfish and saying, what's your personal starfish? And it's very powerful because people will remember her and the starfish. And that's what you want. That's the enticing piece around it. You want to make it memorable. And finally, how will you create personal stories that will prove that you've been through these challenges? How do you substantiate your messages with your personal stories? When you use stories, people remember stories. People forget facts. People forget numbers. They will trust me. I mean, it's been shown by research, actually. So this is what the kind of questioning that you need to ask yourself when you get into that TED level speech. And this is what we worked through with Jouhayna in a slightly different format. Finally, then you think about yourself. I said to you, the third part of the triangle is thinking about you. So you need, as an individual, to be captivating. So your stories should take your audience on a journey. You're taking an audience through a journey of your experiences, of your life, of your challenges, and you need to be engaging by keeping eye contact with everyone in the room. There is one thing that's called the aura effect. And the aura effect is when you look at everyone as you've got them in front of you, but you look at their foreheads, you look at the hair, you don't look at their eyes. You don't want to be put off by individuals who might be looking at you weirdly, whatever. If you want to create the charisma, you use the aura effect strategy and you just look at their foreheads. People think, oh, they're looking at me directly, because that's when you're in the audience. If you've had a good speaker speak to you, you know that they're not necessarily, you feel they're looking in your eyes, but actually as a speaker, you're likely to just be looking at spanning the room, kind of scanning the room from left to right. That makes you engaging. That makes you as if you're talking to them individually. That's the beauty of public speaking, is that one-to-one. People feel they have a personal relationship with you. And the next thing you have to do is work with your nerves. People tell me, oh, how do I get rid of my butterflies? You will always have butterflies in your stomach. Jouhayna, please back me up with your stories on this. However, any good speaker, what they do is they turn that negative energy into positive energy. So it's your body's natural response to releasing stress hormones that you feel that negative energy. But the negative energy is only as a result of the negative self-belief. Remember how I talked to you about the limiting beliefs you hold about yourselves. I'm not good enough. My boss will find out. They know better. I'm crap. Right? That's when it's negative. Now, because we go through this whole very rigorous process to really focus on your self-talk, and it's, as Jouhayna said, it's very in-depth, you turn that negative energy into positive energy. And I'll come back to you, Jouhayna, on this very, very specific point. And finally, one of the biggest points that I share with everyone, any public speaker, any presenter, spends a minimum of 19 hours preparing.
Yeah.
And practice makes perfect. So it is not a case of, I'm going to do a presentation, here's my slides, I'm going to wing it. That is setting you up for failure. If you're going to speak to in a public forum, you need to know your stuff, because that's the point. It's the lack of knowledge that very often trips us up, or the lack of the knowledge of the content that trips us up. And here I put practice times 100 plus. Why? Because you have to keep practicing. Now, Jouhayna, I'm going to throw this question your way. For your TEDx speech, how many times did you practice that speech to get it right?
I don't even know, because it was such a high number. Like on my way to work, it would be at least 4 times, because it was about 10 minutes and the commute is 40 minutes. So that's 2 times each way. And I'd been practicing it for at least a month. By the time we fine-tuned everything was beginning of May, and we knew June is when. So I think I've done it definitely more than 100 times, and it's not even an exaggeration or to prove a point, like definitely. And then and every time you do it, you're like, I could do this better. And that is the reason why you have to keep practicing, because you're like, oh, I could actually use this word instead of that. And then even the choreography, like every movement I did on that stage was choreographed, and I went back to my ballet days minus the splits in the air. So yeah, it makes all the difference, and you can never practice too much, never. But on the day of the event, I didn't do anything. I played music and I had a mini rave in my house, and I sang all the way till I got to the event. So that's the only time I didn't practice, the day of the event.
Great. Well, thank you for being so open about that. And on the idea of going through this journey, 2 questions. Why did you think this was an important investment for you to make? Because no one said to you, you need to become a public speaker, Jouhayna. You just did this for yourself. Why did you do this?
I think I got a really big push from Mervat. So Miss Mervat Sultan is the Women in Aviation Middle East chapter president. And she met me at work. And what I had done is I was giving her a tour of the building to show her what air traffic control is, and specifically the operations room. And she was amongst 40 women. So I didn't even actually remember her when she reached out to me later. And I was very honest about that. And she said to me that she wants me to host a show for her. And I told her about my negative experience at Dubai Air Show and how I just felt like I don't have what it takes. And I haven't found you yet either, Christina. So I respectfully declined, and she was very persistent, and I respect her too much to decline again and again. So I think she believed in me before I even believed in myself, because I didn't think that I had this specific thing in me to be able to do public speaking, especially to the level at which I've reached now. And I have no idea how this journey is going to continue, but I definitely see a positive progression and trajectory moving forward. So it was actually Mervat that really pushed me and said, I want you on that stage, period, you're hosting my event. And that is actually the picture that you posted at the very beginning of me like standing. That was the closing ceremony. And I remember you told me, you're like, Jouhayna, you have to be very well behaved. It's a very like high profile event. And at the end, you're allowed to be yourself. And I was actually very surprised with the applause that I got at the end. And that is where I did completely Jouhayna style move. And I just like accepted the applause. So I feel it was an important investment that really, I feel like if I didn't have Mervat push me, I wouldn't have done it as soon as I did, but it was definitely something I wanted to do. It was on my list of to do and what I wanted to achieve. So I think it was an important investment because what I did was I hosted that event. And as a host, you don't really have much that you're saying on the stage. It's simply, Assalamu alaikum, welcome. Thank you, sponsors, for hosting, for making this a reality. And then welcome to the stage, so and so, on and off, and that's it. And I remember I posted a 7-second snippet on LinkedIn right after where I quoted Dr. Engineer Saad al-Shamsi. I said, if you can dream it, you can do it, and to push for your dreams. And I explained how there's so few Emirati women doing air traffic control. And this 7-second snippet went viral, and people just said that they want to hear more from me. And I'm like, why? Like, I don't feel I have anything to say. At the time, that's how I genuinely felt. So I think it was an important investment because I basically hired you for that event. And then you're like, Jouhayna, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And I said, okay, I accepted. And you know, it went from doing 10 to 30-second snippets where people would tell me, oh my God, you're so inspiring. I'm like, I literally did nothing. I just quoted what the other person said. And then I wove that into introducing the next person to the stage. And that's something that you taught me, to have that flow in a conference instead of just, you know, thank you next, and just keeping to do that. So it was an important investment because I went from a 30-second snippet to a impactful 9-minute TED Talk. And that is why it was an important investment. And at the time, I didn't realize the significance it would make. And if I had to go back and speak to myself, I would have been like, can you please find top of her game sooner so you could channel and nurture this talent before Christina wasn't living in the UAE. So yeah, so that's the main reason it was an important investment, because it went from 10 to 30-second snippets and fillers for a conference to people wanting to hear my story. And off stage, I remember that day, there was a group of ladies from Kenyan Airlines that came to me and they're like, we literally stayed because we wanted to see you on stage. And I'm like, why? I'm like, I don't know, you just have a thing about you. And I was like, okay, I think it's my I thought it was the highlight. That's what I thought. It was the way I did my makeup, but they just felt that they should be around me. And we had to stop people from coming in to the conference hall because of the COVID restrictions. And people just said it was such a good show and the flow in which everything was moving. So I didn't realize it was a calling that I had until I was thrown right into it.
That's what I think is the moral of the story, is you have to take the bull by the horns, as they say, and try it and see. You might actually be pleasantly surprised that you're talented in it, that you may have that innate talent, you just never investigated it. So thank you very much for answering that question from me. Now we're going to do a final bit of Q&A. Please get the questions coming in. I know, Manuel, we covered your question around managing butterflies. Feel free to ask more questions. Now, what I want to share with you now, there's a few bits that even Jouhayna doesn't know that we've launched through Top of Her Game. So as she mentioned, I run 2 courses, which are about your building blocks to public speaking. Be the Impactful Presenter is the foundational how to be a good presenter, a good speaker. And as you might, as I said to you in one of the slides, which is for corporate presentations, for when you are presenting your company, when you're in conferences. How do you create your message? How do you understand the audience and then tailor that message to them, become impactful, etc. The second course, which you can only do after you've done the first, which is what Jouhayna did, is called Owning the Stage, Be the Charismatic TED Speaker. program. And that is taking you to the next level. That is where you can stand on that stage with nothing but those bright lights on you, and you've got your story, you've got everything ready, and it flows, and you motivate people, and then you get them to do something and feel something. So these are the two programs that I run, and you can always reach out to me for more information. We've also created the Top of the Game speakers directory. So we are actually now, anyone who graduates from the courses like Jouhayna will be on our directory of speakers. This directory of speakers is a directory that we'll make available for organizations, conference organizers to actually pick and work with the speakers that we've got. Jouhayna knows this because I've been in the industry long, especially outside of the GCC, for those who have global ambitions, have a large network of maybe potentially getting speaking engagements outside of the country. And for me, one of the reasons why this is very powerful is because it actually, I want to break the stereotype of what women and men in the region do, and break stereotypes of things and of what the West has of the Middle East and North Africa region. Now, what we also give, and this is completely new because Jouhayna knows part of this, is I offer bonus money can't buy support. Not only do you get the Top of the Game speakers directory, which normally has a cost of $29.99 a month, you would get it thrown in free with the courses. I help you build your public speaking skills through the speaker circle. So we're going to be creating speaker circles where speakers are going to be meeting on an ongoing basis to share their stories, practice with each other. That's a very important part of actually building your story and creating your knowledge base. We also do virtual events where you can practice your TED story, and we've done with Jouhayna 3 or 4 Instagram live events. Where we talk through some of the challenges, help you build that comfort in actually sharing your story, give you exposure locally and internationally via Top of Her Game. Now, this is what's great about Jouhayna. She called it fangirling. Top of Her Game is it is one of the biggest, how do I say this, satisfactions when we get women who are part of our community to be showcased by other press, other events, etc. And we help build your brand with influential stakeholders through the female Majlis, which hopefully will be reinstated again in person. They've been virtual during COVID, and all of this stuff is invaluable because that helps you get out there. So all of this is now a very, very new and very exciting speakers. I call it the speakers toolkit, to get people within the region to really build their not only personal brand but their own skill set in sharing their stories. And I am going to tell you this, I really want women and men from this region to break the stereotypes to the West. So for me, I have a big impetus as someone who, you can tell I'm not from this region, but I adore it, okay? And it's an impetus for me to kind of showcase the wonderful people that we've got here. Now, we've got a question here from Nitu, and so this sits very nicely with the question, what is the duration of each course and how many hours? So each course is 8 modules, 1 hour each, and you have a lot of homework to do in between each session. Jouhayna, you might wanna jump in on the hours of the homework.
Yeah, I remember once I was in a serious procrastination hole, and it took me 3 months to get you an assignment. That is probably why it took us 1.5 years to do all the training. But I procrastinated very hard, and I admit it could have been done quicker. But they are big homework assignments, but they do help you. So do your homework.
So they're tailored, Nitu. I hope this answers your questions. They are tailored, and we focus on the areas that you need to focus more. There's certain individuals who have greater strengths in some parts of presenting and public speaking than others. But just remember, the foundation of this is to get your story out there. And you have to consider yourself as someone who is inspirational. We all are. And we all have something powerful to share. with our communities, with our colleagues. And it is that personal aspect that to me is fundamental for us to kind of stand out from the crowd when we are in either a leadership position or have aspirations to be in leadership. Any other questions? Because we've done a fantastic job in sticking to really actually an hour. We had actually planned an hour and a half, but do we have any more questions, any thoughts, any observations that you might want to share? Brilliant. Thank you very much for this. And yes, so thank you very much for your great feedback, everybody. So remember, you can always reach out to me. I will be sending information out on the courses and all the package in terms of the benefits that you get as doing the two courses. Any questions that you have, of course, you can reach out to both of us, both on social media and on LinkedIn, wherever we are. Please spread the word about everyone thinking about their story and how they can inspire others through their TED level speech. It's really important that we get we demonstrate that anybody can do amazing things. It isn't just the big guys or the big entrepreneurs or, you know, superhuman people. It's normal people like Jouhayna. I'm sorry to call you normal, Jouhayna, but you are. The insult.
I'm kidding.
But normal people can do amazing things and can be super inspirational in their own way. Everyone is inspirational. And this is a final note, by the way. I've actually done a lot of training sessions within the region. And I always get the comment, oh, but I don't have anything special to say. And I somehow, by working through this process, we always find something that is inspiring in each person. I say that everyone, I don't know if anyone here has seen what a rough diamond looks like. It looks like a normal stone. It looks like a normal stone. If you picked up a rough diamond that hasn't been polished, you wouldn't know it's a rough diamond. You'd probably throw it away. But actually, that's what we do through this process. We reveal, we polish you, and we reveal the gem inside each one of you. And that's the metaphor I'd like you to close with, in terms of, I can be that gem. I can be that Jouhayna. Jouhayna didn't know she was a gem. Now she's a polished public speaker, TED level.
Sparkly.
Super sparkly. So anyway, on that note, I'll leave you here. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Emmanuel. Thank you, Zahra. Thank you, everyone, for your feedback, and thank you for your comments. Spread the words, and we will hopefully be in touch.